that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We may have been late to discover the America, and maybe we're too early for space exploration and colonization. But you know what? We're just in time to save Galaxy of Heroes and the Nightsisters. Clap it up, people. You guys did it. Community, we all did it, guys.
Yes, we can. Thank you. God bless you.
Make Grievous great again.
My goodness, this weekend was a doozy, ladies and gentlemen. In case you didn't hear it, let me give you the 10-second summary real quick. Someone sat in the toilet too long and figured out a team that could auto phase 3 and phase 4. And then Capital Games quickly found out about this and ended it with a quick nuke. And in result, a lot of other negative stuff came out of it, and a lot of people were upset, and rightfully so. And today, Capital Games, something I have to say don't see from a lot of developers out there. They came out, announced they're going to roll back changes, and they even apologize, which is something you don't see a lot of game developers do. So awesome for them to listen to the community's feedback and roll back these changes, because the changes that they initially made with the changes to Bonds of Weakness for the Sith Raid had an everlasting impact on the game, and it negatively affected people who invested heavily in Nightsisters. So it looks like after collecting a lot of the community feedback, they talked to a lot of us behind the scenes as well, and many other things. They came out today with an official statement talking about rolling back these changes to Bonds of Weakness, because the change of the Bonds of Weakness drastically affected the Nightsisters, and a lot of people spent time, energy, gear, Zetas, and even money into these characters. And to do a change like this, which nuked kind of almost 50% of their viability with the initial screenshots I saw, was a drastic thing to change. It even made old Daka pretty much useless with her Zeta. Now they're making those, they're rolling back those changes, and they have a really nice statement I want to read to you guys real quick. So I already kind of introduced what was going on with the whole situation, but pretty much the Bonds of Weakness was the big issue. This Critolite team was really only working because of Darth Trey's Iceland. People were like, hey, just make the changes to isolate these Bonds of Weakness changes. You're affecting everything else but Darth Trey, the core thing that was making the team work. And they definitely realized that, and they said that they're going to roll those changes back, so no longer when you get 20 stacks of Bonds of Weakness, you'll get this healing immunity or of some sort that Darth Trey, the Raid Darth Trey, is applying. So first of all, this is what I want to point out. First of all, big props to them, because not a lot of developers stick their necks on there and they're like, we made the wrong call. A lot of them, they'll just keep doing the same exact thing until they're blue in the face and not admit that anything is going wrong. CG Top Hat, who is one of the top brass over at Capital Games, he pretty much starts off by saying that he wants to admit that this was the wrong call. What they should have done is announce that a change was forthcoming and spent a few days designing and testing the change. And that was one of the biggest pieces I said in my video towards the end. There was some tough love in the video that I had to share. And one of the problems was that I get they wanted to address this really quickly. Totally understandable, but you can't just do this change really quickly that without testing out. It was a serious change, and I'm glad they definitely recognize that there needs to be some testing before they can implement a change that drastic. Then they go on saying that they should have announced it to the community what the change was before we implemented it. They started off that way. They did make a forum post saying, hey, we're gonna make changes to this Critolite lineup. So they did give the warning, but then like within a few hours afterwards, then they make the change. They do admit that they probably should have just made that first initial post, then move on and do some testing with the changes they want to implement. It can be easy in the face of the wrong call to dig in and try to defend your rationale in the first place, but it would be the wrong thing for the game, and we are, like you, first and foremost fans of this game. So I'm asking for your faith that even though we may have made the wrong decisions from time to time, if they really are wrong, we will correct it. And thank you guys for making that statement, because as I said, I've played plenty of games where they'll make the wrong call, they won't even address it, and they'll keep moving on. And there's kind of a game quite similar to Galaxy of Heroes, Deals of Marvel, and I've kind of followed their story, and that's how the developers are over there. They make a big mistake, they don't acknowledge it, and they just keep on going as if nothing happened. We are rolling back the Bonds of Weakness change because the battle system has a bug in it, which prevents us from recalculating max health as it changes, and consequently throttling the health percentage correctly. And there's a little side note, this sort of calculation is not being done elsewhere in the game and only affects this updated version of Bonds of Weakness. And the issue that's going on, it's a client bug, and it's something that's going to require an update to the client, which is some ways out. So whatever they're going to do, it's not going to happen anytime soon. And then apparently Whenever they do get this fix out, they're saying it also probably is not the right fix, and they go on to explain it is kind of a complicated situation. If you know what was going on that lineup, there's so many layers to it that no matter what you did, you're kind of screwing something up in the process. So I get probably what they're about to say here. As a general rule, we talked about this on the channel before, when we discover an infinite loop that allows players to trivialize endgame content, we try to act swiftly as possible. Man, they acted swiftly on this one, let me tell you. One of our internal goals is to try to avoid changing character kits in a negative way if at all possible. And this doesn't always work out that way, but it's a guiding principle. In this instance, the key element that was enabling the loop is the SWG Ventress, and by extension, her synergies with the Nightsisters, and most importantly, the Nightsister Acolyte. And then Darth Tray was also part of the problem, as we talked about, because of the health steal up that she grants when you're hitting an isolated raid boss. But we've reproduced a similar team using Kira, so really the problem is Asajj and Nightsisters with the health steal up mechanics. And trying to fix this problem rather than change Asajj and potentially alter the entire Nightsister faction, which is one of the biggest concerns that we had, we wanted to see if we could change the context on where they were facilitating an infinite loop and still leave them really good in the raids and leave them unchanged everywhere else. And here again, they're pointing out that they were wrong. This is where we fell down. Our definition of really good, quote unquote, especially on the back of a breakneck change, is not the same as your definition. On top of it, the fix didn't even work, so it was a double whammy. It was a big problem, and then a lot of people had to call it out, and I'm glad they even recognized it themselves. Rather than scramble and try to add another layer and double down on a bad fix, we're going to roll back the change and go back to the drawing board. Yes, thank you so much, and we are still going to be making a change to the raid or to the characters that enable the Crit-A-Light team. However, whatever that change is, we will test it in-house more and rigorously and announce to you with some more lead time what change is coming. If we have to make a change to a character, we'll have an open conversation on how to preserve the investment made by people that are significantly negatively affected by that change. Thank you for being understanding in the situation and working with us to build a better solution. So again, awesome that they recognize that this was a problem, because they could have easily just stopped doing, just stop listening to feedback and just keep going with where they were heading with bonds of weakness. And it was such a drastic change. Again, I only saw miscellaneous screenshots out there with the before and after, but the few that I've seen, again, anecdotal, and there's a lot of other things that could have affected the scores, but it looked like the Nightsisters were losing about 50% of their viability in the raids, and sometimes even more with the screenshots I saw. There were so many layers to the issue. There was the Asajj Ventress issue, the Nightsister Acolyte issue, the Darth Tray issue, the Bonds of Weakness issue. So there were so many things they went with, and the issue that the direction they went originally affected both the difficulty of the raid and drastically affected the Nightsisters as well. And at the same time, the fix they made didn't even fix it. It made matters worse. So there was just a lot of things wrong. So I'm glad that they recognize this problem, because a serious situation like this, when there's money being spent, because people spent a lot of money on Nightsister, Zombie, Mother, Talzin, and all these other things, and the Zetas, which takes so long to get there, and the Gear 12 stuff, there's a lot of investment in there, and I would have to say, you can't make a decision that quickly when there's so much at stake. But it looks like we're gonna have to put a pin in this conversation. We're gonna have to wait and see what the new solution is going to be, and I'm glad they're gonna take the time to address it. It's not a big issue right now. It definitely is an issue. It's something that has to get fixed with the looping of the Crit-A-Light team, but I don't think it was that serious that it needed to get fixed right now, because only a very few members out there in the world could do it. And if you have a 7-star tray, you've pretty much mastered the raid at this point. So this is definitely something that needs to get fixed before the long term hits us, but it's not something that needs to be fixed within mere hours of finding out about this lineup. So this is gonna have to be an ongoing conversation. You guys left so much feedback on the previous video that I made, which I shared a lot of it with the developers. So let me know down below, what fix would you want them to consider implementing in the future, keeping in mind that we can't have the infinite loop of the Crit-A-Light lineup. What would you do so you don't make the Nightsisters worse, but at the same time try not to make the raid too hard? Let me know down below, and I will definitely try to share some of that feedback you guys leave. But again, just a quick video. Hopefully you guys are a bit happier after all these rolled back changes. Let me know down below, and if you did enjoy the video, go ahead and leave me a like, comment down below, and subscribe so you're not missing a thing. And until the next video.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrap that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak. Don't talk back. Da 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 da.
I knew you were totally stuck and I lay on it.
Excuse me. Just have never heard this kind of music before. You ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Yakety yak, yakety yak.
Party Richter, Party Richter.
Down, 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 down.
Party Richter, Party Richter.
Son of a bitch.
Party Richter, Party Richter.
Down, down, down.